Hi there everyone. Welcome back to my training series entitled Understanding EMV. We are currently in the EMV issuing section. In fact, we're in the final chapter of the section. And in this video, we will be looking at the topic of EMV cryptography. Okay, let's get straight into it. So as we discussed earlier, right, one of the principal reasons, why EMV was implemented is the great anti-fraud benefits that chip cards offer over magnetic stripe cards. Important to note is that these anti-fraud measures are actually based on cryptographic functions, which require the use of cryptographic keys and artifacts. So in this section, we will be looking at EMV cryptography at a high level, starting from key concepts. Just a little warning, there's a lot of theory and some of the concepts are quite complex. So if you do find yourself struggling, please feel free, pause the video, cycle back a few slides, do a refresher and get back into it. We will build on the previous concepts as we move through this video. Okay, so let's look at the very first concept that we need to discuss under cryptography. Very basic. What is a key? So a key is a string of characters, alphanumeric characters, or a string of data or characters made up of alphabets and numbers. And this is used by an algorithm, okay, to scramble plain text data. The key is not necessarily related to the algorithm, but please note that the key forms the basis for the security of the algorithm. This means that the algorithm may be published, it may be publicly accessible, but without the key, the scrambled data may not be unscrambled. What this also means, right, is that the entire basis for the security is worthless should the keys ever be compromised. So it's very important to remember, for your organization to remember that in order to protect these keys, to ensure the security of these keys, that we should have an effective key management process in place. Okay, so I mean, how is data encrypted? Right? So this slide will cover the basic recipe for this process. So firstly, we have a string of data that you would like to encrypt or obfuscate or hide or scramble or prevent unauthorized persons from seeing. And in our case, we've got this phrase from a very popular movie from back in the 80s. Okay. What I need to do next is I need to use a key that's going to assist me in scrambling this data. And what is a key? A key is a very large or a large unique prime number. A prime number is a number that may be only divided by 1 or itself. In the previous slide, we also said that a key is a string of data made up of numbers and letters. So in our case, our key is going to look something like this. All right. Okay, so we've got the original data, the plaintext data that we'd like to encrypt. We now have a key that we plan to use for this process. And so what we're going to do now is we are going to throw in an algorithm into this process. Okay, and what is an algorithm? An algorithm is a predefined sequence of instructions designed to produce a specific output. In our example here, I've chosen a DES algorithm that we will use to encrypt this data. So if you combine all three, what you will end up with is a result that looks like this. Okay, now you have to agree with me that should you give this string of data to someone, there's no way that they can make the relationship between the string and what the original phrase was, right? So mission accomplished. You didn't want the unauthorized person to be able to read this phrase. What they can read instead is this. However, what you do want is for someone you trust or an authorized person that you would like to be able to decrypt this and revert back to the original plain text phrase, right? And so in order to do this, what the person would need to do is, firstly, they would need to have access to this key exactly as it is. So we will use the same key again, and we will use the same DES algorithm. Okay. However, what we will do is we will reverse the algorithm. Okay, so we take the result, we reverse the algorithm, we apply exactly the same key, and what you should end up with this combination is the original plain text string that we had encrypted in the first place. In case you're wondering, where did the term algorithm come from? If you look at the top right-hand corner of my screen, you'll see a name, Abu Ja'far Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi, or al-Khwarizmi. Yeah, please feel free to Google him. The term algorithm actually is derived from his family name. Okay. Algorithms are predefined sequences of instructions which are designed to produce a specific output, and there are two basic algorithm types. Okay, the first one is a symmetric algorithm, and in a symmetric algorithm, we use the same key as in our previous example. We use the same key to scramble and unscramble the plain and ciphertext. Okay, so whatever key is used to scramble the plain text to create an encrypted string, we would use the same key to unscramble it to revert back to the plain text. Okay, these keys are always private, so you would never share this key, to unauthorized persons, or make it available publicly. You would always keep symmetric keys private and secure. This type of algorithm is considered to be quite fast. The next type is asymmetric algorithms. Now, with asymmetric algorithms, you use two different key sets. Okay, so the first key set is used to scramble the plain text data, and a different key is used to unscramble it's used to unscramble the encrypted data back into its original form, right? So one of these key sets is kept private, and it's known as a private key, and the other one may be distributed in public, widely distributed, and that's known as a public key. Okay, asymmetric ciphers are very slow when compared to symmetric cryptography. Okay, in EMV we use both types of algorithms, okay, for different purposes, and in order to support this, uh, we on the card we store different keys and data entities. So let's look at some of the symmetric keys and data that we store on the card or on the chip. EMV at this point in time makes use of a symmetric standard case, so symmetric cryptography, known as triple DES. So remember in our example, we use DES. So this is an advanced form of DES. It's known as triple DES. Triple DES or 3 DES is used for online transactions, and it's used to secure the integrity and secrecy of sensitive data in the transaction message between the card and terminal and the online host systems. Okay, so please note there are three basic key sets that we insert into the card. Okay, and these key sets are unique to each card. Please also note that these keys may be referred to by different names depending on which issuer or card association or embosser or company that you are dealing with. Okay. So I think what's more important is for you to understand the function of these keys, because if you understand the function, then you'll be able to relate it to whatever name is being used to identify this key within your organization. Okay, so there are three triple DES keys and one key index that are personalized on the card. Okay, the first one is something that we call a cryptogram generation key. Then we have a PIN encryption key. We have a message authentication key. Okay, so bear in mind these are the functions. The first one is used to generate cryptograms. The second one is used to encrypt pins. The third one is used to ensure message integrity. Okay, and the fourth item that we would personalize the card is not a key. It's something called a derivation key index, or DKI. Okay, so let's discuss these four items in a bit more detail. The first one is a cryptogram generation key. Okay, sometimes referred to as a DK auth or derived authentication key. So this key is used to generate cryptograms during an EMV transaction for authentication purposes. Okay, and these cryptograms take the form of the following four. So it's an AAC, ARQC, ARPC, or TC. Okay, and, that basically the AAC refers to a decline, TC is an approval, ARQC is a request to go online, and ARPC is a response from an online host. So even though I've referred to it as DK auth, this key is also sometimes referred to as a UDK AC or unique derived application cryptogram key. Depending on which specification or menu that you're looking at. Okay, but it may also be known by something completely different. The personnel within your key management team, may have a different name by which they refer to this. Okay, so please remember to identify this by its function. Next, we have the PIN encryption key, also known as the DK-ENC or the derived encryption key. And this key is used, as the name suggests, to encrypt and protect the secrecy of pins. Okay, another name for this is also the UDK-ENC or the unique derived encryption key, but may even be called something else as per the previous slide. Okay, so remember, identify the key by its function. Next, we have the message authentication key, usually referred to as the DK-MAC, derived message authentication code key. This key is used to ensure integrity and security of online messaging. Just note, issuer scripts are protected from interference by encrypting them with this key. This key is also known as the UDK-MAC. Okay, so unique derived message authentication code key. But as with the others, may be called something else, so remember, identify the key by its function. The last component with regards to symmetric cryptography is the derivation key index, or the DKI. This DKI is not a key; it's a key index. It's a pointer which sort of indicates which key set was used to create the derived key sets. And the DKI is stored on the chip, and it's sent up to the host system during every online transaction, and is used by the host system to determine which corresponding master key set should be used to decipher the data. Right, as I said, this is not a key set. It's a pointer to the system indicating which master key set to use. Okay, so how do we derive these unique symmetric keys? Right. So issuers have these key sets that they store securely on their host systems. Okay, and these keys are typically referred to as master keys. Okay, and each master key is usually a set of three. Right, so you have an MK auth, an MK-ENC, and an MK-MAC. The issuer may have several sets of master keys. Okay, but each set must contain each of these three subcomponents of keys. Right. And these master key sets, they may be set up, per bin range or per product range, or you could have several bins or several products, all using the same master key set. I mean, it's not extraordinary to see a case where an issuer could have a single master key set, and every single card they issue is issued under a single master key set. Okay, so the point is, every organization, every issuer will determine how they assign the keys to the cards, where it's bin level, product level, organization level, etc. Okay. So how do we derive these unique symmetric keys? Okay, so these master keys are never published beyond the host system. Remember, we said that, right? So the issuer has these master keys, which they never ever publish, and never share to anyone. It's kept securely within the private network. And so what we and these keys are never directly personalized on cards, right? However, we use these master key sets to create unique card-specific keys that we will personalize to each card. Okay, so the important thing to note is that these derived keys are unique per card. Okay, and the purposes we already discussed the purposes in terms of cryptogram generation or PIN encryption or message security. Okay, so this is why the DKI is so important, right? Because during a transaction, it tells the host system which master key set was used to create the derived key set. So any cryptographic processing that the host system needs to do, it will be able, it will use this DKI to identify the relevant key set that the card has been personalized with. Okay, so how do we derive these unique symmetric keys? Okay, so remember we spoke about an organization, and in our organization, let's assume we have two master key sets, right? So we've got a master key set 1 and a master key set 2. So under master key set 1, we've got an MK auth, MK enc, MK mec, and under key set 2, we've got the same 3. Right? Host systems will store these master key sets. They're cataloged under these different indexes. They're kept securely. They are never shared. They are never exchanged. No one has access to these keys directly. Okay. When we are personalizing or originating a card, okay, for each card record, we will take the pen and the pen sequence number. We'll apply the pen and pen sequence number to an algorithm against and using these key sets. Right? Remember, the pen sequence number is unique to each card, which means therefore that every single key that we derive using this method will be unique to that particular card. Okay. So here's our card, our chip, and what happens is we take the MK auth, we apply the pen sequence number with the algorithm, and what we end up with is a DK auth. We take the MK enc, apply pen sequence number, apply algorithm, and what you end up with is a DK enc. And then we take the MAC key, the master MAC key, apply the pen sequence number and the algorithm, and what you ended up with is a derived MAC key. What we also then do is, because we use master key set 1 to create these derived keys, we take this indicator, this DKI1, right? And that's what people on the card, right? So here's the pointer saying that these keys were created through the use of the master key set 1. Okay. So later on, as you progress through the videos, once we go into the acquiring section and once we start looking at the transaction flow, we will touch on these keys and how they use in a bit more detail. Okay, so that takes care of the symmetric key artifacts. Okay, let's look now at asymmetric cryptography. EMV makes use of asymmetric cryptography specifically for the offline data authentication process, okay, which is called CAM or ODA, card authentication methodology, or offline data authentication. And this is usually made up of one of these 3 methods. Okay, so we have something called SDA, DDA, or CDA. EMV applications make use of RSA algorithms. Okay, so unlike Symmetric, where we use DES or triple DES algorithms, here in asymmetric cryptography, we're using RSA algorithms. RSA stands for Reverse Schmidt and Edelman, and these are the 3 inventors of this method. Unlike symmetric cryptography, asymmetric cryptography does not use the same private keys to encrypt and decrypt. Remember, we noticed there's a private key used to encrypt and there's a public key used to decrypt, and the private and public keys are different from one another. Okay. So here's some important asymmetric cryptography terminology. Firstly, okay, and I think 2 slides back we spoke of SDA, DDA, and CDA, and these are different types of CAM or ODA. So let's talk about the first one, which is SDA. SDA stands for Static Data Authentication. This is the most basic data authentication methodology, which reuses a static piece of data in every single transaction. Okay, please note that as at the creation of this video, this SDA is no longer supported. The card schemes have mandated that all issuers migrate off SDA as an option for card authentication methodology. The next one is DDA, Dynamic Data Authentication, and this is next level. It's a lot more secure than static data authentication. Okay, it's more secure than data, it's more secure than SDA because it uses dynamically created data per transaction. Okay, so for every transaction, the data used is different, right? And then finally, we've got the highest level or the top tier data authentication method, which is called CDA, a combined data authentication. And what combined data authentication basically means is that it combines DDA with the application cryptogram. Okay, that's produced during a transaction. Okay. When we do the EMV transaction flow in the acquiring section, we'll discuss SDA, DDA, and CDA in a bit more detail. Okay, let's look at more terminology under asymmetric cryptography. Okay, we have something called a scheme pair. Again, this is a mathematically related key set issued by card association like MasterCard, Visa. Okay, and this key set, this key pair, okay, the scheme key pair is made up of two components. The first component is called the scheme private key, SKPR, and this is never shared. This is kept securely on their host systems, and it's never ever shared or distributed to anyone. Okay. The second part of this pair is the scheme public key, the SKPU, and this public key is shared. Okay. So the private key is used to encrypt data or sign data, and the public key is used to decrypt or resolve the data. We don't use the same key to encrypt and decrypt. The scheme public key is also referred to as the card association public key or the CA public key. Okay, we had something called an issuer key pair. So the previous slide we spoke of a key pair. Now we're talking about issuer key pair, and similar. So it's a similar principle as the previous slide. However, that spoke about a private and public key pair, generated by the scheme being like MasterCard or Visa, Discovery, etc. An issuer key pair would be a pair of related keys that are issued by a bank or a card issuing organization. Okay, and so this is made up of an issuer private key, IKPR, which is never shared, and an issuer public key, IKPU, which is shared. Okay, similar to the previous slide, we use the private key to encrypt or sign data, and we use the public key to decrypt or resolve the data. Next, we have something called a signature. A signature is a string of data that's unique to an individual that has been scrambled or signed with an RSA private key. So in this context, when you speak of an individual, we're referring to a card. Okay, so a signature is a string of data unique to a card. Next, we have something called a certificate. A certificate is a string of data unique to an organization, okay, which has been signed or scrambled with an RSA private key. In this context, when you talk of organization, we are talking of either the issuer or the scheme. Okay, so a signature is basically encrypted data unique to a card. A certificate is a string of encrypted data unique to the issuer or the scheme. Next is the term signing. Signing is a term used to indicate the scrambling of data through the use of asymmetric algorithms. Okay, so it's equivalent to the term encrypting that we use in triple-DES. Okay, and resolving, it's the other part of it. So this is the term used to indicate the unscrambling of a signature or certificate through the use of asymmetric algorithms. Okay, and this is the equivalent of decrypting that we use in triple-DES. Okay, so the following 8 items are personalized to the chip, right? First is something called the static data authentication tag list, tag 984A, and this is there specifically for SDA only. Next is something called a static digital signature, or also called signed static application data, tag 93, and this is for SDA only. Next, we have something called an issuer digital certificate, also known as an issuer public key certificate. We then have something called a scheme public key index. This is not a key, this is a key index, okay, SKPU, and this is tag 8F. We then have something called an issuer public key remainder, tag 92, an issuer public key exponent, tag 9F32, an ICC private key, and an ICC public key certificate, tag 90. Okay. Also, where cards that support offline enciphered PIN verification by ICC. So this is a CVM type where the PIN is encrypted by the terminal before it's passed on to the card. So if the card does support this, then some cards may have an additional key pair that is used to scramble and unscramble the PIN between the terminal and card. So basically, the card will pass a public key off to the terminal, and it will use the private key to unscramble. Alternatively, if the card doesn't have this dedicated a PIN encryption key pair, what it could do is it could use the DDA key pair, okay, which is also called the ICC private key. Okay, so let's talk about those 8 items in a bit more detail so you understand them better. So the first one that we had seen was something called a static data authentication tag list, tag 984A, and this is for SDA only. Now, I did say that SDA is no longer being used. There is a mandate requiring all issues to move away from SDA, but it's something that you should know. I believe if you understand how SDA works, it will make your understanding of DDA and CDA that much easier going forward, right? So, excuse me. So certain pieces of data on the card will be used as part of the SDA process. These tags are listed on the card in the static data authentication tag list. It's quite a mouthful, right? Basically SDA tag list, okay, which is tag 984A. This data is shared with the terminal, okay, and the tags that would make up this static list would typically include, okay, the following, but not restricted. There could be additional tags, but these are the basic ones that would almost always be there. Okay, and you'll see that things like the PAN sequence number, application expiry date, application effective date, the CVM list. These are all tags that we've covered in the EMV issuing parameter sections videos, and so you should be familiar with these. Same with issue action codes, all 3 of them, issuer country code and application usage control. So these make up the static data authentication tag list. Okay. Next, we have something called a static digital signature or signed static application data, tag 93. Now remember, once again, SDA only. We're talking of a signature. So what you're talking of here is a piece of data that's been encrypted using an RSA key that's unique to a card. So which means every card will have a unique signature. Okay. So static digital signature is created from the unique card static data, which was in the previous slide, and obviously because pen and pen sequence number was in the tag list, by having those in there, it would make that string of data now unique, okay? Because every card number is unique. Okay, so first we create a string of the data listed in the static data authentication list. Okay, so we've got the string. Remember all those I think I showed you 10 tags on the previous slide that made up this list. So you basically make a string of all of these tags. Then we'd hash the string, right? And we'd use a hashing algorithm, SHA1, and this will produce a hash output which will be 20 bytes long. Okay. We then take this hash, this 20 byte string of data, and we sign it. Now sign it, what a sign means, we encrypt it, right? Using the issuer private key, IKPR, right? remember we said the issuer private key is never shared. Okay, so we'll sign this hash data on the issuer host system, but the key itself never leaves the system, right? This what we're interested in is the fact that we've taken that static list of data, we've hashed it using this algorithm, and then we've signed that hash, or we've encrypted that hash using this RSA private key. Okay, so the output of the above is a digital signature. This is an encrypted or signed string that is unique to the card. Remember, we said because the pen and pen sequence number combinations are unique, it would mean that every card would have a unique digital signature. Okay, we write this digital signature or the signed static application data to the card. Right. Next, we're looking at a certificate, an issuer digital certificate, issue a digital application data, or issue a public key certificate, right? The issuer digital certificate is created in the following way. The issuer will submit their issuer public key. Remember we said that each issuer will have a key pair, right? So they've got an issuer key pair, IKPR, which is a private key, and IKPU, which is a public key. So what the issuer will never ever disclose the private key. That's always maintained on the backend system and kept secure. But what they will do is they will submit the public key to the relevant scheme, to MasterCard, Visa, etc. The scheme, remember, also has their own key pair. They've got a public and a private, they have public and private keys that together make up an RSA key pair. So what they will do is they will take the issuer's public key. Right? Remember, the issuer will make this key public, right? So they will distribute it to the scheme. The scheme will sign it. They will sign the issuer's public key using the scheme's their own private key. Remember, the scheme will never disclose its private key to anyone. Okay, they'll sign this key with the private key, and what this will produce is a digital certificate. Right? It's a certificate, remember, a string of encrypted data or signed data unique to an organization. Okay, unique to who? Unique to the issuer. Okay, because it's their issue public key that's being signed here. Okay, so the scheme will send this issuer digital certificate back to the issuer, and the issuer will store this securely on the backend system. During card origination, card personalization, this certificate is then applied. Right? Now remember, you could have just one certificate that could be written to every single card, or you could have, one certificate written to a particular, bin range or a different product range, which means that the issuer would have submitted multiple public keys to the scheme. They would have signed it. They would have signed those, using either the same scheme private key or multiple scheme private keys, and they would return it. And based on the certificate policy of the organization, they would then write these certificates to the card. The important thing to note is that unlike the digital signature that we spoke about, which is unique to each card, when we write certificates to cards, you could have multiple cards with the same certificate being written to them. Right? Remember, certificates are unique to the organization, the issuer, not to the card. Okay, the next concept you need to speak about is scheme public key index. Remember, we said that the issuer sent their public key to the scheme, and the scheme signed it with the private key. So what the scheme will do is that when they return the certificate back to the issuer, they will also send them the scheme public key index, the index of the key set that they used to scramble the data, okay, or to create the issuer digital certificate. Right. So, as I said, so in order to identify which scheme private key was used to create a certificate, okay, the associated scheme public key index, identifying the scheme pair is written for a card, right? So remember, the scheme will return the issuer digital certificate back to the issuer, and they will associate the relevant key index with it. When we, as the issuer, as the bank, when we are creating the card and we write the certificate to the card, we will have the associated index on the same database. So what we will do is when we write that certificate, we will also write the associated index to that card. Right? Just to reiterate, this is an index only. It's not any of it's neither the scheme private or public key. The scheme public key, right, will actually be stored on the terminal. So we don't. So remember, the card just has the scheme public key index. The scheme public key itself is not stored on the card. It's stored on the terminal, and we'll discuss this later on during the EMV acquiring section. Okay, next spoke of something called an issuer public key remainder, tag 92. So during RSA cryptography, the length of data being signed, okay, so that original plain text data being signed must be equal to the length of the key that is being used, right? And there's a key being used, the key being used by the scheme to sign the issuer public key. So what we're saying, sometimes the issuer public key could be longer than the scheme private key being used to sign it. Now, for this cryptography to work, both the data being encrypted and the key being used must be of the same length. Okay, so to accommodate this difference in length, what we then do is, where the issue public key exceeds the scheme private key length, okay, we truncate. So so I'm just the thumbs up. Let's assume that the issuer public key is 100 bytes long, and the scheme private key is 92 bytes long, right? So there's a difference of 8. So the issuer public key is 8 bytes longer than the scheme private key. So what we do is, first we truncate those last 8 bytes. So we reduce the issuer public key to what did I say, 92 bits, or 92 bytes or 98 bytes. Basically, we truncate the issuer public key so that its length is now the same as the scheme private key. Okay. We then create the digital, so they create the digital certificate, they pass it back to the issuer. The issuer at some point will write it to the card with the key index. But this truncated bit, was it 8 bits? I think I can't remember right now. But that 8 bits that we, or 8 bytes that we truncated, we will now write this as the issuer public key remainder onto the chip. Okay. So when resolving takes place, what will happen is we will decrypt the certificate to, and what we will obtain is the issuer public key. But remember, it's truncated, right? So then we'll take this remainder, we'll add it to that truncated result, and what you now have is we back to the 100 byte full length IKPU that was the original issuer public key that we had submitted to the scheme for signing. All right, let's look at issuer public key exponents. The issuer public exponents is used in signing and resolving process. Let's not worry about going into too much of detail here. You're welcome to research it or Google it. But basically, there are two options that you could use. One is it's either 3 or 2 to the power 16 plus 1. And this is written to the card to indicate what exponent to use, with this particular key. Next, we have something called the ICC private key, and this is very relevant, very important. This is used for GDA and CDA, which should be all the cards out in the market today. And this is an extra key pair written to each card. These key pairs are unique to each card, so no two cards will share the same ICC private key. The keys are written to the chip itself, and it's stored securely within the chip, and it's not accessible. It's not. There's no way to actually view these keys on the card. Okay. The private key will never, so the chip will hold this key pair securely. It will never ever share the private key. It will not with the terminal, not with any external party. It is kept secure for private use by the card itself. It will it will share the public key. Where required. So just to reiterate that most, if not all cards that support CAM will contain this key. The scheme is mandated a few years ago that SDA should no longer be supported, and all cards need to support DDA, and obviously we're progressing towards a CDA mandate as well. Okay? And this mandate should apply to all regions in the world by now. Okay, and lastly, we have something called the ICC Public Key Certificate, used for DDA only. And so to complete the private public key pair, the card is personalized with the ICC public key in the form of a certificate. The certificate is signed by signing the ICC public key. So the card's public key is submitted to the issuer's private key, which creates a digital certificate. And the certificate is then written to the chip. Important to note the following. Okay, and we've said it before, let's repeat that the security features of EMV are only effective if the relevant keys are kept privately and securely. If the keys are compromised, then the entire security premise of EMV cards are compromised. Right? So keep the keys safe, right? Key lengths play a significant role in the security and are constantly increased in length as more processing power becomes available on terminals and chips. So as an example, so the following are approved CA public key lengths. So this was from a manual that was published in 2017. You can see that they had a key set that expired in 2017. That is 1152 bits. We've got two key sets expiring at the end of this year, 2023. One is 1408, and the next one is 1984 bits. So you'll see that with each subsequent key that's issued, the key length actually increases. Okay, so obviously this was from a spec data 2017. We're now in 2023, which means we would have keys that would be valid for the next 5 or 6 years, and I can tell you that these keys would be a lot longer than the ones that we are seeing represented here. All right, just a reminder. Okay. This section of cryptography is not intended to be a definitive source of cryptography. So, if you're expecting more in-depth and detailed analysis or breakdown of how the actual cryptography takes place, sorry, there just simply isn't enough time to do that in this training, given that the focus is actually EMV, right? But if you are interested in understanding the detail more, in looking at the underlying levels, there's lots and lots of resources on the internet. I mean, just go and Google symmetric cryptography, asymmetric cryptography, Google all the concepts that we've discussed, and there are literally thousands and thousands of articles and documents and websites that will help you out. What I found was, messing around on the internet myself, is that there's this site that you can see on the screen right now. What I will do is I will post it in the comments. So, but if you want to mess around with encryption and decryption using various methods and keys, dares, triple dares, and other methods, go in and mess around. Go and have a look at the site. You can make up keys, and you can select which algorithms you use, etc. So it was quite nice to actually play around with it practically. Okay. I've got no affiliation with that website or the one that I'm going to mention next. It's just I found it very useful, very helpful with my research. So for those of you interested, like I said, no affiliation to me. I'm just suggesting it because these were sites that added value to me. Okay. So the following article is also one of the best resources that I found that explains how data and keys are broken down to a binary level and shifted by the algorithm. Okay, remember we said you have the plain text data and you have a key and you have an algorithm, and we just sort of bake this and you combine them and you get encrypted data. But if you read this article, it actually goes down to the actually converting these X values into binary, and how the algorithms shift the bit positions around to actually revert it back into a string of alphanumeric characters, and that results in the scrambling. So if you have time or if you have any interest, please have a look at this article. Okay. Uh, as I said, I will try to drop these links in the description. I hope I don't forget. If I do, please just throw a few comments at me telling me that I forgot in my old age, and yeah, I'll make sure that I actually copy these links into the description then. Okay. This brings us now, well, firstly to the end of the EMV cryptography section, but more importantly, it brings us to the end of what was a very long EMV issuing section. Okay, so well done on making it this far. From the next video onwards, we will be looking at EMV acquiring. And part of that will be, once we pass the introduction, we are then going to look at the EMV transaction flow, and that's when things get really exciting, because we take all of the concepts, the counters and the limits and the parameters and the cryptography, and we sort of bring it all together during the transaction flow, so that we better understand how these tags interact with one another to make the EMV transaction so secure. Okay. So once again, thank you for spending this time here in this video, and I look forward to catching you in the next video. Thank you, and bye bye.